On this week's GTA 6 o'clock, GTA 6 on PS5 Pro. Will physical editions of the game exist? And how long is a GTA 6 day? It's all here on this week's GTA 6 o'clock. Hello and welcome to episode 16 of GTA 6 o'clock. I did that intro live and Dan is beside himself of how great it was.
It was really good. What I loved about it is James and I are sat in the room together. Hello, everyone. We're sat in the room together and James went from his normal voice to like Tiger Man voice.
Trailer voice.
It was absolutely seamless and I was smiling because I was loving the professionalism of it.
Well, hello and welcome to episode 16 of GTA 6 o'clock. I am James Jarvis and joining me, as you just heard, is Dan Dawkins, DD. Thank you to everyone who listened to last week's show and has continued to listen to this show. Please, if you're new here, subscribe to the channel. It really helps out this show. And follow us on Twitter. We're at GTA O'clock on Twitter/X, whatever you like to call it. Continuing our countdown, the countdown to new info, trailer or screenshots is still on. I'm saying it's 52 days to go. That is not official. That may or may not change. Thanks for all your responses last week. Dan put a little question at the end saying, hey guys, would you like some shorter shows? And the answer to that was unanimously, absolutely not, you fools. God. Please make longer shows, if anything, was the response.
Now, I'm not suggesting we stop making long shows. I mean, as a compliment to the long shows, would people like short form or digestible content? I think that probably amongst, thank you all for everyone who listens to the show in its full-blown glory. I think what we're thinking is, can we reach a new audience? Gasp. Not that we'd want new audience by doing something shorter, but for now, don't worry, we're here, long and live.
We're here. We're going to make this show extra long. And it's not a promise, but let's see how we get on. There were a couple of questions that I'd like to pick up on from last week. I'm just going to read a few of them out and throw them at you, Dan, before we get into the main episode topic for this week.
Yeah.
The first one is from Trig Josh on YouTube, I believe. And in short, the question is, how dynamic will the game be in terms of realism regarding time? And they went on to expand and say, will characters be able to say, I'll meet you at 7 p.m. and then when the game clock has advanced, there'll be an in-game clock where we can regulate that? Will we be able to plan activities that we're able to complete prior to that time? Will characters hold each other to task or complain, alter their behavior relative to whether you've said, hey, we're meeting at 7, and then if you don't meet at 7, they're going to be sad about it? Do you think any of those things are likely, and how do you see that kind of thing being in the game or not?
I think to that level of precision, it becomes slightly onerous because, as we'll talk about, a GTA version of a day is not 24 actual hours. It's significantly more compressed. It's actually more in the region of, and this is good research, 48 minutes, you were saying, James?
Yes, and this is sort of part of their second question that says, will there be any change to the in-game clock relative to real time? We know, obviously, if someone went to sleep, it advances the game clock. But is that going to be the same in GTA 6, do we think?
Yeah, so that is 25 to 26 times faster than reality. If you were to extrapolate that to being somewhere in a minute, you'd have to a sort of 2 to 3 second window to be somewhere or something.
Yes.
So I would say no, that's going to be a bit difficult. But what I do think, and this has happened in all sorts of games, is that idea of, it takes place in the evening, go to your hideout and wake up when it's like a different, whether it's the morning, dusk, when you're sort of in a very clearly noticeable different time zone. I think that's a thing that games have always had and I think will continue to have. I personally wouldn't want it down to the minute. I think it would get difficult in terms of time management. I already feel like my life is under the pressure of the clock and I'm on a constant countdown. So the last thing I want is my game doing the same thing to me.
It would add a bit of drama to it, though, wouldn't it? If you had to get there by 8 o'clock. Bit of a dash through the city because you've failed to, go and do whatever you had to do beforehand, and then you have to get there in time. I can see that kind of thing happening in missions, like there are time-specific events in missions where you have to get to the bridge before this time, otherwise it's going to, be fully open. You won't make the stunt jump, that kind of thing. But yeah, I agree. I think saying that you'll meet someone at 7 is a bit restrictive. But I can also see it saying, I'll meet you this evening. Or, and then in the world, other things opening up depending on what time of day it is. So like other side missions being available in nighttime, just like in Red Dead and in previous GTAs where a lot of different things happen at night and you have to be at a certain place at a certain time to trigger a certain event. Those kind of things away from the main story, like in-world events, are almost certainly going to happen. And, maybe we'll see some more UFOs at some point.
Yeah, I think, for example, if there was a multi-threaded external quest where you finally visit the lost city of Atlantis, you'd almost want that. You'd almost want that to be down to the last second, right? Because it's a super, super Easter egg. But in the main game, you want it to be reasonably friction-free, so I wouldn't have thought so. There's an interesting second part to this question where he says, will the characters hold each other to account and complain? For example, why were you late? I was there and you weren't there. I think you can do that as a cosmetic thing. It's funny. So I think if you said, why weren't you there? I was there. What happened? But I wouldn't want it in a way where it irreparably damaged the relationship or the game. So then I had to be on time 5 times to erase the fact that I wasn't turning up on time for things. Again, it's too much like life. So I don't know if I want that in my game.
No, I can see that happening with, like NPC characters or side characters where it's some kind of Strangers and Freaks mission and they say, hey, be here at this time. And then if you're not, the next time you go back, they're like, hey, where were you last time? We agreed to do this thing. Just a little funny aside might be in there. But yeah, I can't see them logging everything and then berating you when you turn up for the 5th time late. But yeah, as you say, the GTA 5 clock was about 48 minutes was a day. And then the times that people went to sleep actually differed. So if you went to sleep as Michael, that would advance the clock by 6 hours. Franklin was 8 hours and Trevor was 12 hours because Trevor's a lazy layabout. They might replicate something like that for 6, but I think the 2 characters we've seen so far, Jason and Lucia, are barely similar in terms of their age and or outlook. So that might be a bit more standardized this time.
Yeah, it feels a bit statementy to go, a man sleeps for X hours and a woman sleeps for Y hours. Though I actually think this is quite an amusing observation for GTA 5, and I hadn't realised this, is that, Michael sleeping for 6 hours versus, say, 12 for Trevor. I mean, Trevor, you might say, well, he's not so much sleeping as unconscious for 6 hours and sleeping for 6. Michael only having 6 hours sleep, that speaks to the dad in me, because after a certain stage, after you've been ruined by rearing children, you no longer have the capacity to lie in. So even when you want to, it's been ruined. So I quite like that as an amusing observation.
I mean, I think 6 hours sleep is probably enough.
Well, I mean, the proverbial quote is ex-British Prime Minister Margaret Thatcher ran the country on 5 hours sleep. Some would say that was the problem, but I'll leave it there.
5 isn't enough. 7 is a good benchmark for any of you sleep fans out there. I would say aim for 7. If you can get 8, well done. But, I think we've been surviving on 6 or 7 for the last however many years, so let's carry on. Right, the next question from Bernardo Franco 4411 has asked, seeing how the gaming landscape has been behaving lately, do you guys think GTA 6 will ship complete in physical and digital form, and that the single player mode can be played completely offline? Obviously, the online portion will require it, but for game preservation, I would love that the game ships complete in physical format. Thanks in advance for your response. Keep up the great work. Throwing it over, Dan. Will GTA 6 ship complete?
Well, it will. I believe it will ship in both physical and digital forms. Yes. Is a question. I'm going to throw a question at James actually, just to see what his understanding is of it, because I wasn't sure before the show. What do you think is the current breakdown of game sales split between digital and physical, if you had to do ratios?
Oh, you mean so like a game that's been released on both?
Yeah, or like in the broader market, what's the rough breakdown between sort of revenue attached to digital versus physical?
I would say these days it's 70% digital would be my estimation.
That is a good guess. And as late as 2023, certain statisticians were suggesting it was as high as 80%.
I can believe. I mean, I haven't bought a physical game, from a shop in some years, I don't think. Like, everything I've got has been redeemed digitally. So I based it on my buying habits. I've bought, out of the last 10 games, probably one of them in a shop.
Yeah, and I'm very, very similar. But what I would say is, as much as digital is the predominant, and people are predicting it will be 90 to 95% of the market increasingly soon, but still, with a game the size of and the mass market appeal of a GTA 6, similar to a title like, let's say, Hogwarts Legacy, that was a big mass market hit last year, a really well-known property, that came out as a physical edition, you would never say no to 20% of a giant number, because it's a giant number.
Yeah.
So you're still going to serve that market. So, like, yes, is it digital? 100%. Of course it's digital. But there will be, I think, a box copy that will ship, I would expect, at the same time as the digital copy on whatever launch day is. But will that physical copy end up getting patched ad infinitum? Probably. Like, I just cannot believe there'll be a world where you just install the disc and never need to install another patch.
Yeah.
It ain't happening.
There's no way, I don't think, that this won't have a day one, like GTA 6 won't, is going to have a day one patch, definitely, or a day zero patch, or whatever they end up calling it. When you put that disc in your machine, it will need, it won't need to download it, but it will have a download that, it will work offline, I am sure.
Yes.
Like, it will be a full game that you could play offline if you have the disc that you've bought from a shop. However, as the world works these days and how game development works, is they will be tinkering with that all the way up to release, and will want to patch it day one so everyone gets the best experience. Like, they've finally nailed out all of the bugs that they think they can up to that point. Like, there'll be so many tiny tweaks that won't affect the game in general, but will affect the overall experience of things that they found in the background that just need updating and fixing and UI tweaks and all of that kind of thing. So that will happen, almost certainly, but it will also, yes, exist physically and digitally. What was the next bit of this question? Will the single-player story mode, can it be played completely offline? I think, as I said, yes, I think it could be. It will probably depend on which console you're playing that on. Because some of them have, measures where they check in every now and then to make sure that you're online and it can talk to the servers and things like that.
Yeah.
Equally with saving and cloud saves and all of that stuff. Like, it would be, by the time this game comes out in a year's time, they would be expecting most of those consoles to be online in some capacity most of the time. Whether yours is or not is a different story, but I think they would like it to be online just so they can keep updating
and
it.
GTA 6 will probably do everything in its power to encourage you, albeit gently, to get involved with GTA Online.
Yeah.
Because that's its upsell. That's where the revenue is. The game and the business model wants you to play GTA Online. So you're going to get nudged relentlessly to take that single-player game online. So that's just the reality of it. I was also looking beforehand about, are there any recent games that have only launched digital only? Notably, Alan Wake 2 was a digital-only release. I think in part, and I know this for a fact, the team were working on that game up until like a week before it came out. It might even be less than that. Like, they were still doing things to it until almost the day it went live online. So GTA, if it goes physical, which we say it will, won't have that luxury. There'll come a point, a month, 2 months, whatever, they'll have to cap it and go, this part of the game is shipping as is. I think it used to be like a sort of 2 to 3 month lead time, maybe even a bit longer. I'm not as up to date as I am on the processes and how quickly they can turn around from, gamer's final process, ship, distribute. I don't know how tight those turnarounds anymore.
Yeah, it's like when the game, as they say in the industry, goes gold.
Yeah.
Which is when they ship the discs off to the printers to get it all printed. Yeah, I suspect that is probably going to be a month at the very shortest to print however many hundreds of thousands of copies of those discs and things they need to do. But that will be the full game code on that. Well, I say that, it might not be. It might just be a disc that you pop in and then it goes download the game.
It's an empty disc. It's a pretend disc. I mean, that would be hilarious. It pretends to load for 5 minutes, and then you have to get it all digitally. It does. There is a slight question mark where, given Rockstar's travails with leaks, having physical copies in the world is obviously a greater source of risk. Now, I imagine there's so much of that process will happen in a super controlled way up until the point it ships to the stores, and then it's almost like everyone for themselves, because any shop store holder could get the game, load it, and get the scoop.
And that will happen.
Yeah, so
100%.
That will happen. So that's the only thing that gives me pause on, is there any world where they just do a digital release? But I still don't buy it, and I think probably more than that, will they release fantastical $200 style collector's editions? Well, you'd think so. This is a company that loves making money, and as an audience member, Rockstar are great at this stuff. They make brilliant physical collector's editions, so I'd love to see that.
Yeah, I absolutely can see collector's editions, special edition, like multiple different editions of the thing, of GTA 6 existing. Like the GTA 5 PS4 collector's edition was £134.
Yeah.
Obviously gave you access to the blimp by pre-ordering it, but you also got a steelbook, some exclusive artwork, a snapback cap, a little GTA 5 security bag with a little key, if you remember that.
Yeah.
The blueprint map, and some digital content stuff. So that kind of thing almost certainly is going to happen for GTA 6. Red Dead, they did a similar thing for, that came with like a lockbox and a puzzle and playing cards and all that kind of thing. The interesting thing, I guess, with that is that edition was a similar price, but didn't come with the game, like not even a digital code. So there is a way that they can still do a collector's edition that is 130 quid, but then the game is separate. So you then have to go and buy your digital or physical edition of the game, plus your collector's edition if you want that. It's just a different, merchandise way of marketing things, right? You can just have a collector's edition if you want. I would suggest it's a little bit weird to own the collector's edition and not own the game. But, birthdays, special occasions, you could say, X person's going to buy me the game, X person's going to get me the collector's edition that doesn't have the game in it.
Wow. Imagine that. I could be sat there on launch day wearing my official Lucia bikini and beer hat, but not actually have a copy of the disc with the game on it. But I'm merched up to the eyeballs. Yeah. So, let's see. Let's reach that eventuality. I think this all loops back round to, as we keep talking about on the show, Take-Two, the parent company's next big financial update in May, where we think there'll be probably confirmation either way of whether GTA is going to ship on time, which we think might be linked to a new trailer and or a date or a pre-order. At that point, maybe it's too early to start talking collector's editions, but when you're pre-ordering, that might be a time where you'd say, pre-order and there's 2 paths or 3 paths. Or is that too early, maybe?
That feels
I don't know.
Quite early for me.
Maybe too early.
Especially if they're announcing when we're pushing the date a bit.
Oh, if the date's getting pushed, you're right. Yeah.
But yeah, I guess if it still ends up being March time, just before a year off is not too much of a stretch to start talking about pre-order stuff, but it's quite a long way off.
Yeah, maybe it's a bit far off.
And they'd have to work out what all that stuff is going to be. I mean, it's we're set in Miami. You get a whole load of really colourful things in the collector's edition for GTA 6. Be lovely. You can have a inflatable crocodile. You can have all of these, Rockstar. Inflatable crocodile, little hoverboat thing that can go in the bath that goes around, hoodie, fluorescent hoodie, and a duffel bag, because we've seen a lot of a duffel bag. There you go.
That must be one of the best meetings Rockstar have, is what's the merch for our next game, because they actually do some of the best merchandise in the business. They work with legitimately good partners. For Red Dead, they work with Barking Irons to produce their shirts, and they work with Pendleton, who are the premium maker of horse blankets. And actually, now they're more of a lifestyle brand. They sell like attractive blankets that were once for horses for the home. But those things are like genuinely expensive and super high quality. So all eyes on whatever cool thing they line up for GTA 6.
Right, Dan, as a beautiful segue into what you were just talking about, let's put some meat on the horse.
Oh, let's...
For this main topic that we want to get into, which we mentioned at the top of the show, which was what would PS5 Pro mean for GTA 6? And firstly, we should probably take note of why we're actually talking about this.
Yeah, so I don't know the actual origin of this, but over the weekend there has been a notable and widely circulated report of PS5 Pro specs. Do you know the provenance of the leak? Has it been verified?
It has been, so Tom Henderson, I think, and his Inside Gaming website reported on it, which then IGN and a few other people said, yes, we also have heard this and are corroborating the rumours. So there's multiple sources suggesting the same things, but it's still very much in the rumour camp still.
Yeah. Now this says with my, having worked in video game journalism for a very long time, this feels like one of those where somebody slightly adjacent to the industry has got hold of specs. Your IGNs and your legitimate outlets of this world, they know what's going on, but they can't officially say it themselves. But they report on the rumour, and the information is they are reporting on the rumour. There's a tacit endorsement potentially in that. And it also, if it does turn out not to be true or not quite with what they've heard with the whispers on the grapevine, then they can walk away from it because they didn't officially say it, they're reporting on it. But people talk, whether Sony have a relationship to an extent with IGN, as do most major media outlets with PRs. They're not at the point where they'll say, here's our lineup, here's the specs. But, people meet, they talk, they have drinks. They'll be, between you and I, we've got another console coming in this. So no smoke without fire. And there's real big precedent for this. There was PS4 Pro. It makes sense. I feel like all of these things add up to, yes, there's going to be a PS5 Pro. Is it these exact specs? Maybe not, but they're clearly in the ballpark, or people wouldn't validate them by reporting them.
Yeah, and equally we've had GDC, which is the Game Developers Conference, this week. It's happening in San Francisco. That is where a load of prominent game developers get together and talk about these kind of things. Like some of them officially on panels and things, and then other times unofficially in bars and hotel rooms. So it's the kind of time where all of this stuff would line up, and if it's going to come out, it's going to come out when a load of people get together and start talking about things like this. So I can throw some stats at you, Dan, and there's going to be a lot of numbers and letters here, that some of which I don't really know what I'm saying, but I'm going to say them at you anyway.
Well, let's try and make sense of those numbers, because on their own, there's a lot of numbers. So let's see if we can make sense of it.
Well, okay. These are the rumoured specs so far. It's the system memory. Now, the standard PS5 Pro has 448 gigabits per second. I think that's what that means. And the PS5 Pro has allegedly 576 gigabytes per second, which is a 28% increase of the over the standard console. And it's outlined that the PS5 Pro's system memory is more efficient than the standard console, so the bandwidth gain may increase by over 28%. That is a memory increase, which essentially means things are going to load faster.
Yeah, I think that's essentially it. Things will load faster. The console has more capacity to hold textures in memory. It's potentially a bit less loading and breaking. PS5's already. That's the thing about PS5 that's really notable. It loads things really fast. So will I notice a 25% increase in that?
Probably.
Or maybe.
I mean, can you remember when we fired up GTA 5 for the first time on PS3? I mean, the loading on, and even into PS4, those loading screens took quite a while to cycle through before you got to the game.
It really did. And I think actually I've written them out of my memory. Like all of these things, you look back fondly on certain games or whatever they are. For example, I always think of, the original Dead Space was a looker. And it kind of is. But when they released the recent one, the Dead Space remake, in my mind, that's how the PS3 version looked. Then you go back to the PS3 version and go, it really wasn't looking like that at all, was it? But your memory plays tricks.
A couple more stats then. The CPU. The CPU is identical to the standard PlayStation 5 one. However, the Pro has a high CPU frequency mode, which takes the CPU to 3.85 gigahertz, which is a 10% increase over the standard console. In high CPU frequency mode, the power is said to be allocated to the CPU and will downclock the GPU, which is the graphical performance unit. It's one of those things. By around 1.5%, resulting in roughly 1% lower GPU performance. So they are making the CPU processing power higher, and that is countered by a 1% dip in graphical performance. But I think, given everything else that's going on here, that is fine. You would accept that.
Yeah, I don't know what it means in technical specs. It's only as meaningful as what's reflected in reality in the game you play. So specs are one thing, how developers use it is quite another. And when you're talking about 1% aisles, I'm not expecting a sea change, I guess is what I'm saying.
Yeah, the audio side of things is very similar. PS5 Pro is running at a higher clock speed over the standard PlayStation 5, resulting in the ACM library having 35% more performance. The interesting thing is on the GPU side, which is the graphics processing unit, apparently it is rendering 45% faster than the standard PS5. It's got 2 to 3 times the amount of ray tracing, up to 4 times in some cases. And it's using PSSR, which is the PlayStation Spectral Super Resolution Upscaling, which makes it be able to support resolutions up to 8K in a future SDK version, using custom machine learning architecture, a whole load of AI stuff. Basically, it's not going to really. It can't natively output at 8K, but what it's doing is putting the groundwork in for when, people do start to have 8K TVs in their house. It would be able to get somewhere near it without it looking like it's really pushing and super sampling everything up and upscaling everything. It will not do that out of the box, much like the PS5, supports up to 4K. But how many games run natively 4K at 30 or 60? Not very many.
Well, and I was just looking up how many games run in like 120 hertz and or full 4K. How many games run in full 4K? Almost none.
Yeah. Like
literally almost none. There's about 100 games that run in 120 hertz, but they're not running at 4K. The other factor in this is how many people currently own an 8K television.
Yeah, none.
Almost none. They're becoming quasi-affordable, kind of like pretend 8K sets might start at, say, $1,500. Up to $15,000, which is deeply not affordable. So, great for NFL stars and Premier League footballers or, super financiers, not really for the common man. I think all of this feels like, like almost like go faster stripes, or when you buy a pair of trainers with ultra cush technology or something, you're like, wow, my trainers have got ultra cush. It's just a bit more foam. Like it's just to gouge people who deeply care about this. I hate to say it, but I think it's just, and I'm one of these people, is to gouge us idiots who feel like we have to have the latest and greatest thing. But like, will GTA 6 run in 4K? No. Will it run in 8K? Absolutely not. To jump the gun slightly. Sorry,
okay,
I got a bit excited.
No, that's good insight. Dan will not be buying, or no, you will be buying a PS5 Pro, but you will be regretting it on day one.
Yeah, I'll share my thoughts on PS5 Pro shortly, even though you may have got a little preview there.
The final bit of info out of these rumours is that it's understood that to make the PlayStation 5 competitive, it will have a detachable disk drive like what currently exists in the latest iteration of the standard PlayStation 5. And it will also have 1 terabyte of storage space. So currently, the PS5 is running SDK 9, an SDK 10, which is the operating system that every now and then it says, hey, need to install an update. At the moment, we're in 9 point whatever. When we get to 10, that's expected in the fall of 2024, this year, which is when the current targeted release date of PlayStation 5 Pro apparently is expected. Now, just before we get on to the whole PS4 to PS4 Pro, PS5 to PS5 Pro debate. Dan, what do you think these updates, if they happen, obviously we are caveating all of these things with it's just rumours at this stage, what do you think it means for Xbox? Like, is Microsoft, in your view, planning a counter-offensive to this? Do they just carry on with the Series X and S for the next 5+ years?
Well, the wider context I was going to add to all of this is, you're right, in a normal console life cycle, Xbox, the onus would be on them would be to react to Sony's move. Sony's move in itself, though, is pretty wild. Like, if as rumoured, they're going to launch PS5 Pro, they're saying before the end of the year, like this Christmas or fall period. Also, less than weeks ago, right, it was in February 2024, Sony Senior Vice President Naomi Matsuoka said, as of this fiscal year, so from April 2024, and I quote, PS5 is set to enter the final phase of its life cycle. Now,
agreed.
If it's entering the final phase of its life cycle, and if that was commonly more known, who in their right mind would buy a PS5 Pro of a console that's basically on the fade out? Now, that's not going to be this year it ends, but I think we're probably in the final 2 years, like 2 active years of the console's life.
I mean, I was going to go for 4.
Really?
Yeah.
I think 2 to 3. I think
You're
they're
not
saying
getting a
that.
PS6 in the next 3 years. Really? Is that what we're saying?
I mean, we can definitely disagree, and no one knows, right? And like, you could look at the gap between the last console life cycle was huge, wasn't it? Like, really, really huge. The sense I get is that it might not be this time around. Certainly, the way Sony are talk about a final phase of a life cycle. How old? Let's just wind it back. How old is PS5 anyway? PS5 came out when?
5 years, I think. We're in the 5th year, aren't we, of PS5? It's longer than you think.
Well, it released in November 2020.
Okay.
It's not even 4 years old, right? It's not even 4 years old, so it means it's gone past early adopter stage, mass market maturity, and is this year entering its final phase. So the first 2 or 3 phases have been and gone in 4 years. There's not, put it one way, there's not another 6 years here like there was for the previous consoles. You might be right. It might edge up to 4 years. To me, it feels like a 2 to 3 year phase down. I think it will still exist and it won't be put out to pasture. You can still buy PS4 games, but and I know this is going slightly outside the scope of GTA 6 o'clock, but related. I think we'll be talking about new consoles within 2 years. Like, the way the rooms are lying, it feels to me, and what everyone is saying, unless this Sony exec has just gone rogue and said some stuff, but it's wild that Sony would say that. Further context to that, and this is all related to your question, like, Sony have recently, there's rumours gone around that Sony aren't producing any more PSVR 2s, and that's because they're looking to fulfill existing orders. That basically means there's too many of them in shops and they can't sell them because it's $500 and there's not any games, and they've just shuttered half the studios who make VR games. So again, the PSVR feels integral to the PS5 promise, or certainly Sony briefly mentioned that it would be. It almost feels like a degree of generational wind down, and then for me, PS5 Pro becomes almost the last monetizing grasp to trick the early adopters. So you get you would get probably 1 year of having the world's best console before there's already rumours that it's on the phase out. That's honestly the way I look at it right now. I might be wrong, and maybe it's worth it for that 1 year, because I'm all over the place 'cause I'm excited about it, but it could be that PS5 Pro is the premier place to play GTA 6 when it launches. But I don't think you'll be feeling that glow for very long, is what I think I'm saying.
Okay, well, fine. I mean, I just thought for sure they'd want to get at least 2 years out of a PS5 Pro, which, I mean, all of this is great news for Rockstar and Take-Two, because it means that even a Pro version, which we'll get onto in a bit, of GTA 5 will probably exist. and then they get to launch the PS6 version of GTA 6 2 or 3 years into the release of GTA. They get to hit another console generation, and loads of people can go out and buy the game again. Like, it's great.
And that's a great point, because on the current timelines as we believe them, if PS5 Pro launches this side of the calendar year, like within 2024, and GTA launches at earliest, like we've said, let's say April 2025, the launch version of GTA 6 then basically is the PS5 Pro version, surely. Like, if it's already been in market for 4 or 5 months, they would at launch optimize for that Pro version, wouldn't they? Or would they go, here's the standard one, and in 6 months, you PS5 Pro owners can have, so like a year after you bought your console, you can have the reason you bought your console. I'd expect that on day one.
No, I don't think so. I think they're releasing 2 versions of that game. If you look at the difference between the PS4 version of GTA 5 and the PS4 Pro version,
yes,
like the difference was minimal. It went from 1080p 25 to 30 frames a second on standard PS4. PS4 Pro was 30 frames a second. And then the jump to PS5 gave it fidelity mode. Basically, it introduces 3 modes, right?
Yes.
Which was native 4K with ray tracing at 30 frames a second. Performance mode, upscaled 4K at 60. Performance ray tracing, which was upscaled 4K plus ray tracing at a target 60 frames a second. Also included faster load times, increased population, traffic variety, increased vegetation density, improved lighting across shadows, water reflections, texture quality, improved anti-aliasing, motion blur. Like, loads of technical things were added into the PS5 version. I would suspect what will happen is we'll get the release of GTA 6 on Xbox Series X and PS5. Obviously, it will also work on PS4 Pro, which may just give you slightly faster loading times. And then when we get
PS4 Pro, you think it's going to run on?
No, it's not running on PS4. PS5 Pro, it will run on.
Yes,
but
so
it won't.
I was going to say, oh my god, it's going to run on PS4. That's a miracle.
But it won't give you any of the enhancements. But then when you get to let's say they have reduced all the timelines, 6 months after release, when you get the PC version,
that does make
that's when you get your PS5 Pro Definitive Edition, which is the same as the PC one. That's got a whole load of extra enhancements. It uses the power a bit more. It gives Rockstar an extra 6 to 8 months to develop all of that stuff and go, hey guys, if you've got a PC or your shiny new console, here is the definitive edition of the game, which you now should all buy.
Yeah, that does make total sense. And as I was saying it, I was thinking, of course, there's the PC version that they haven't technically confirmed, probably on a 6 to 12 month advanced timeline of whenever the console version launches. But then you are still you're not at PS6 stage. You're still in the PS5 Pro's lifestyle. All I find weird is that there'll be then potentially a sort of 6 to 12 month gap where PS5 Pro owners haven't really got an Elan version of GTA 6. They're waiting for the PC version to come out as an excuse. And that is, you're right, that'll be the version that's, when GTA 6 comes to PC, it will have to be the best version available. PS, it's also on consoles.
Yeah, the problem with that is it's only on one console.
Yeah, well, exactly. It's only on one console as we know it, and is even though PS5 Pro's specs, if true, are a big leap, are they big enough to justify, like, a leap from PS? The top end PCs could make a much bigger leap than the leap, I think, from PS5 to PS5 Pro. This is very semantic now, and I understand it is, but
yeah, I guess what they're not doing though is there will not be how do you do that definitive edition on an Xbox unless Microsoft really lean into some of their cloud processing and go, we can do that too. You just don't have to buy a new machine because we're using the power of Microsoft's secret cloud to do all of these things, which is a thing that they've talked about before but never actually really managed to pull off. Like, there aren't much better looking games on a Series X that are on a PS5 where you can noticeably go, oh, like that's obviously using the cloud processing power because look how much better it is, or look how much faster it's running. That I don't think they can do. So then you're in the situation of, have Sony now broken the life cycle of generational consoles coming out at the same time, if this PS5 Pro comes out, and then the next Xbox console is twice as powerful as the PS5 Pro, which means Sony then have to, like you say, either use the Pro as a very, very short win before they jump to 6, or you're out of sync with Microsoft, or Microsoft, like they have suggested doing, like they're going to make maybe one more console and then they're done, and they're just like, well, it doesn't matter if we're out of sync because we're only making one more, and everyone can just buy digital things from now on.
Yeah, it was funny because Microsoft as well were also under the microscope, weren't they? Because of all that stuff that came out about them publishing games on other consoles, and there was talk of it's literally the end of Xbox and Phil Spencer's getting canned. And then very shortly they came out and said they talked about what they were actually going to release on other consoles, and then started alluding to the next raft of Microsoft consoles.
Yeah.
I think they were talking about, again, like consoles, like we're thinking generationally, years ahead. That might be just a thing they're saying, because it might not actually happen. Like, we don't know, but looking on the longest possible horizon, it does feel like, are we going to reach a stage where it's 100% digital, 100% cloud/PCs? It's just not about the console war anymore. And I've been in all sorts of mainstream media. 10 years ago, people were asking me on the BBC, is PS4 Sony's last console? And I had to go, well, no. Like, not at all. It's nowhere near being that. And that's been the case. It's been a decade plus. But I think we are finally reaching that event horizon where maybe we've got a generation left.
Yeah, one more.
Maybe one more generation until, cloud plus AI plus whatever solution becomes the answer. Again, we're dancing all over. I'm dancing all over the place here. But what I think is really weird is the follow the money answer in all of this is, if Sony are releasing a PS5 Pro console at Christmas and they want to keep selling those all through the year, they will be speaking to Rockstar to go, we want a bundle which is GTA 6 plus PS5 Pro. That's going to sell this console, make us a load of money. It's good for you, it's good for us. But then the messaging will have to be, they'll be going, on one hand, this is the best place to play GTA 6, brackets, but it's not the real PS5 Pro version, because that's going to be the PC version, and that's 6 to 12 months away. So I think, the follow the money answer would actually be maybe not true. Like, if they're trying to say it's the best place to play it, yes, but it's not really the optimized version. It's just... It
would be the best place to play that version of the game at that time.
It will run, because the machine is faster, it will run, but it's not been optimized specifically for that machine, if what we've said is true and the timelines are correct.
But in this marketing meeting, I'm the marketing man going, but it is technically true, isn't it? It is the best place to play at that
exactly.
time. I can put that on the box, right?
Yeah.
Okay, good.
It's exactly right. And I've been that guy, and we've all said those things, and that's true, but it's a slightly disingenuous message to market if you look through time.
Yeah, just don't do that. I mean, who wants to look through time anymore? It's long and tiring.
Well, I mean, unless it's a GTA version of time, it only takes 48 minutes. Well, that's fine. But on our actual timeline, it feels quite a long way away.
So the quick way to summarise all this, and we can give very short answers about this, does this mean that GTA 6 will jump to a PS5 Pro version straight out of the gate? The quick answer is no.
Well,
because there will be a standard PS5 version that exists.
Yeah, I agree with you. As in, no, the real upgrade will be the PC alignment.
Yeah, later. It will come.
But they will pretend that PS5 Pro is the best, because technically it is. So they'll pretend it's a PS5 Pro version, but it won't really be. Or will it? Let's see if we're surprised. But logically, it would align with the PC release.
And tied into that is, will there only be a PS5 Pro version? Again, no. Like, even if that console comes out this Christmas, they're not going to go, it's just on PS5 Pro now, you all have to buy one of these.
No, it's crazy. That's a console that nobody owns, that no rival console can match, and there's no PC version. So they'd be saying, we're selling to a market that doesn't yet exist. No, is the answer there.
Yes. Great. Well, I think we had a lot of technical chat and a lot of good discussion points in there. Let us know what you think about all those things. Will you be buying a PS5 Pro? Does it matter to you? How many editions of GTA 6 are you going to buy? And most importantly, what should be in the special editions of GTA 6? Will it be an inflatable alligator? Yes, it will. Dan, thank you for joining us this week on the podcast. Please, like I said at the top, if you haven't subscribed to this channel, please subscribe to the channel. Follow us on Twitter at GTA V O'Clock. And we will come back next week for another episode of GTA 6 O'Clock.